we would like to quickly share with all of you that our research shows that 77% people are working from home. The big challenges are remote external meeting, workspace at home, and effectiveness of team discussion. We'll go through some more findings as we raise more questions. So our first question to Barbara would be that with these three identified as big challenges in Indian context, what would be her advice to all of us?
Great. Well, thank you, Prashant, and hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be joining you today. So I think that those pain points are really identified, and I think it's helpful to first acknowledge that, I write about remote work and virtual work and have been doing so for a number of years. But what we're facing right now, what we're going through right now is not normal remote work. And so a lot of, what we recommend in normal times has been less, sort of less manageable in the short run during this crisis. I think that it's not surprising to me that that you hear that external meetings and a space to work are the two of the most troubling issues, because those are both the two of the biggest challenges that people face even in normal times with remote work. So advice, I think under the circumstances, I feel uncomfortable giving my normal management consulting advice on Workspace because it's, the reality is very different. For us right now. But I think that in general, what I would advocate for, what I would say is it's really helpful to be deliberate about your workspace, recognizing that it is not going to be ideal for most of us at least, but that we can, negotiate or set up some kind of structure, however not ideal it is. Having that structure and that repetition and that routine will actually ultimately make us more productive. Normally, under normal times, we would advise companies, make sure you have a dedicated workspace for remote employees, that they have a dedicated workspace, whether it's a dedicated desk or in some countries we have, some places we have bigger homes and then you can say a dedicated room. But I think that right now it's more more realistic to say, okay, you need to have a specific conversation with the others in your household with whom you're working, or who are also working there, and set up a routine. Whether it's that, each of you gets a certain amount of time in a particular space, or that you set up a shared space and then have a kind of a set of norms for how you're going to work in that space. I think one thing that people are finding, as I look at, we're gathering some data now here in the US, one thing that I'm finding so far is that routine is bringing people a lot of comfort. So that's one thing I would say. I'm happy to also address external meetings, Prashant, if you would like me to now, or we can move on to another topic. And
please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So external meetings are always, especially if you're not. And sorry, by external meetings, Prashant, just so I'm clear, do you mean meetings with
clients, vendors?
Yeah.
Who are outside the organization.
Right. And particularly if you're in an industry or in a culture that really values face-to-face contact and relationship building, this can be extremely difficult. And so one of the things that we talk about a lot when we look at remote work in general is the importance of purposefully building relationships, social relationships. So that's not just the work. It's very, for people who are not experienced in virtual work, it's very easy to hop on a call like this and just jump into business, right? And to, just go on as you normally would. And what happens is that you get the task done, usually, but you don't develop a relationship. Whereas if you were face to face, I'm guessing that India is fairly relationship oriented, and normally when you would jump into, when you would go into a face to face meeting, you would have a fair amount of time talking about, how is your family. How are things going? Maybe, we talk about the weather a lot over here. And so, that normal sort of organic conversation at the beginning of meetings with clients and so forth really helps to develop a personal relationship that goes beyond the business that you're doing. And so it's important to carve out time to do that in a virtual setting, and initially it could feel a little bit artificial, but the fact is that, first of all, you have things to talk about, right? There's a lot going on out there in the world right now, and so it's definitely something to talk about there. I know that at least in the States, we have developed much more of a practice about inquiring about each other's families. Is everybody well? Is everybody safe? And how are you managing? Whatever would be culturally appropriate in India, and with especially in a client conversation, I think it's important to find that content and to make sure that you're engaging in that you're carving out at least a few minutes for that early on in a conversation, just as you would in face-to-face relationships, but it has to be much more deliberate in a virtual setting.
Thank you very much, Barbara. This was quite insightful, and in our context, we love to share our personal information on things like family, etc. And there are no laws yet barring us to ask such questions, and therefore I think that's a very good advice that even if it is a virtual conversation, the starting point should be more striking our emotional connect, just as we do in an in-person conversation. That's a very important point, and we're making note of it.